All right. Welcome back to the Malapert's Mark podcast. I had considered renaming this show recently, but you know what? I didn't have time to do a rebrand and remake logos and all that stuff. So for right now, we're still the Malapert's Mark podcast, episode number 160. This is a unique episode because this is so far the first episode out of 160 that I've done it by myself. Usually I have at least Vlad the wrestling expert with me, Robert the frozen Asian for most of them as well. This was supposed to be actually a first episode that I didn't do with Vlad and that I had Robert on with me alone. He had a family emergency, so we had to unfortunately cancel Robert's appearance. It's okay. It's more important that he takes care of what he has to take care of. So I'm here by myself today, first time. Had never done a podcast by myself where I'm just recording it and, this is, I guess, going to come out at a later date, probably tomorrow. I'm not going to try to edit too much because I found that on YouTube land, it really doesn't matter if you put a lot of work into a video or none at all. It seems to get more views when you don't put a lot of work into these videos. So I don't want to waste a lot of time on edit and stuff. I just want to talk some NXT tonight. Unfortunately, Robert couldn't be here. I was looking forward to it, actually. It was kind of going to be a funny show that we didn't have Vlad with us because Vlad, the wrestling expert, a mainstay on this show, a Hall of Famer, I would say, doesn't watch NXT. He decided it's too much wrestling to watch, so he only watches main roster WWE and I think maybe some AEW, but doesn't watch NXT or TNA at all. Robert, the frozen Asian, does follow NXT, so me and him, we have that camaraderie. We were going to giggle about a lot of stuff. I was going to bring up all these storylines and, talk about them with him, but it's all good. I'll just do it by myself. It's been too long since I talked NXT on this channel. Actually, I would say it's been since August. This is where I left off last, so I highlighted right here the period of time that I'm going to cover on today's episode. So I'm going to try to cover all the way from August 26th up here down to October 2nd, which happened a few days ago. Right now it's August 5th as I speak, Sunday night. So NXT is coming up this Tuesday. It's a big episode. But yeah, it's a big chunk of time. I haven't watched NXT in a while. I kind of speed rushed and did a marathon run of all these episodes to catch up so I could do today's show. I don't really even know where I'm going to start. But yeah, the last thing I did watch was Heatwave at the end of August. So I have a review of Heatwave from August 24th on my live streams tab. Did a full in-depth review. I'm not going to review shows as in-depth anymore. I gotta save some time. But yeah, after that, NXT and Impact every Tuesday and Thursday. So from August all the way through September, we have all these NXTs and Impacts to talk about what happened. And at the end of September, we had a couple of pay-per-views for both these brands. TNA had Victory Road on Friday the 26th, and then the very next night, NXT had No Mercy. So a lot of important things happened there, as we will talk about in a few minutes. And then afterwards, as we go into October, interestingly, we had a couple episodes since No Mercy, NXT and Impact, and that set up NXT Showdown, as it's called right now, October 7th, this coming Tuesday in a couple of nights. This was actually supposed to be called NXT Invasion, where TNA invaded, quote-unquote, NXT, and it was actually called Invasion for a few days, and that's what it was supposed to be, and then I think they changed it because, from what I heard, it's controversial based on Israel supposedly invading Palestine and all that political stuff. So it's not called Showdown. It's not called Invasion anymore. It's called Showdown. Excuse me, which is kind of a bummer because it had the same branding as the 2001 WWF Invasion pay-per-view where WCW and ECW quote-unquote invaded WWF and all that. So that was kind of going to be a cool little callback, but it didn't happen. I'll talk about the whole invasion, quote-unquote, storyline when I get to the end of it. I do want to discuss more of the things from back here, kind of, stuff that happened just after Heatwave. So I'm going to format today's show. I'm going to talk about first, I want to go through crossover storylines that have to do with both NXT and TNA. So I'll start with that, and then I'll do the NXT exclusive storylines that didn't really have any crossover, and then I'll do the TNA storylines at the very end. So that's how I'll go about today's show. Evolve, by the way, is another developmental brand under WWE's umbrella, and they are on Wednesday nights. And before, when I was reviewing NXT and Impact, I would kind of throw Evolve in there since they were all developmentals. But for today, I don't want to throw Evolve in there because they kind of don't have anything to do with any of this stuff. So I'm just going to stick to NXT and TNA, and I'm going to do a little Evolve special. It's reviewing all this time period of Evolve as well after this. So after I go through all this stuff, the next show I will do is Evolve. So don't worry, I will get to that, and I will get to AEW as well. But this is how I'm doing it now. I'm rotating. I'm going to go kind of monthly and see if I could do it like that, because I used to go week by week and try to cover everything, and it was just too much. So this is my way of kind of trying to ease the load on me of running a YouTube channel by myself for pro wrestling, because it's just impossible. There's too many freaking shows. There's 9 shows a week. If you want to follow all the shows on American TV, it's really hard. So I did it for a while. I was reviewing every single show, but it was kind of too much. You couldn't really juggle a normal life and a job and all that at the same time. So I kind of gave up on it, and this is the new format of the show. So let's get on with it. I'm going to start with NXT and TNA crossover. And when I think of NXT and TNA crossover, I have to talk about Trick Williams first and foremost. The TNA champion, the TNA World Champion. So he's been carrying both brands, as he would say. This is an image of him from August 28th from TNA Impact. He had just taken a loss, a pin in a tag match to Mike Santana. So that earned Mike Santana, in a way, the next title shot at Trick Williams. Mike Santana had had a couple of shots before that. One had been ruined by AJ Francis on NXT, and the other one, I think he had a 3-way match with Joe Hendry and Trick at Slammiversary. So Trick, after that, had defended the world title against Moose at Emergence, and now a new challenger had to be found, and it turned out to be Mike Santana. So Mike Santana is getting his one-on-one, honest-to-God shot at that title. But Trick has been all over both of these shows, actually, not just feuding with Santana, a match that hasn't even happened yet. That's going to actually happen at Bound for Glory coming up next weekend. So a lot of people are anticipating that that's going to be Santana's big coming out party as the new World Heavyweight Champion for TNA, a major brand in pro wrestling. So that would be Santana's first major world title as a singles competitor. We'll see if it happens. I mean, at this point, it's Bound for Glory. It would be really devastating for him if it didn't. It's already been devastating because they've already had all these video hype packages and stuff of him coming up, you know, from on the streets, and his family is so proud of him and everything. And when he didn't win that match, the 3-way, and, you know, didn't bring the world title back to TNA, that kind of hurt. And he got back in line, you know, he brushed himself off, dusted himself off, and got back to work and earned a title shot and pinned Trick in a tag match, and that was enough to get Santino to give him a title shot. So, okay, gets another chance. Is it going to happen this time? I mean, it basically should, because Jesus Christ, man. But Trick, I will push back against a lot of hardcore TNA fans who have said that Trick being world champion is kind of bad or seemed like a detriment to TNA, makes them look bad, that they are giving their world title away to WWE and kind of, doing whatever WWE want them to do. But I think Trick has been actually a very strong performer. And maybe if he was on their brand, he would probably be the world champion. So I don't think that was so egregious as, say, JC Jane, who passed up a lot of TNA wrestlers on the female side that I thought kind of deserved to have a title run before JC Jane. But okay. So I haven't minded Trick's run. Trick's run has been really solid. I've been really enjoying it. I think he's killing it personality-wise. He's really blossomed as an arrogant heel, and I've liked it. So I'm not really dying for him to lose the title. As an original TNA fan, I am Team TNA. I don't want to see them look bad in this whole partnership with WWE, but I don't think this has been one of those circumstances. So, alright, moving on with what Trick has done. So, Trick on NXT throughout this month also had another instance where he was feuding with someone on NXT, and that was DIY. DIY came down from the main roster to address Trick Williams. So, Trick had made this announcement that he thought he was the greatest NXT performer ever, basically, is what he said, out of any era of NXT. And he said he was surprised that nobody said anything back to him on social media, because usually when people say stuff like that, people will respond and say, what the fuck, yeah, right. So he came out on NXT and was like, well, yeah, I guess I am, because nobody said anything back, and then DIY came in. So this is from the September 2nd NXT. Trick is bouncing back and forth between Impact and NXT, putting in a lot of work. I will commend him for that. But storyline-wise, in TNA, he knows he doesn't have anything to do until Bound for Glory in October. So that Santana feud is just kind of gonna, run its course very slowly. Trick has that in his back pocket. He has a certain amount of days in his TNA contract that they mentioned that he doesn't have to defend the title. So he's just going to sit on that title. And Santana, the best he could do is kind of try to show up to NXT sometimes and mess with him, which we'll see later on. So this DIY thing did turn into a tag match a couple weeks later. It turned into a reunion with Trick and his former ally Carmelo Hayes. So Carmelo Hayes, who's been doing pretty well on SmackDown. I wish he was getting a better push, but Carmelo Hayes came down and teamed with Trick against DIY, and that kind of ended in a weird finish where The Miz, Carmelo Hayes' partner in the main roster, came down to help Carmelo Hayes, and that was kind of the end of that. I didn't really see Carmelo Hayes or The Miz interact with Trick at all after that, and neither did DIY. So DIY kind of just took that loss against Trick, and that was that. So, like I said, Trick all over the place here in this month that I am covering. In addition to having this feud with DIY, he's also been trying to get at Obafemi. So Obafemi is the NXT champion, and every so often we'd see Obafemi, who is in a feud with Ricky Saints for that NXT World title throughout this time. Trick will go up to Oba from time to time and tell him, hey, at some point, you and mine's path is gonna cross, right? So that does happen, and I will cover that right now. Actually, before I talk about Obafemi and the NXT title, I will mention one last thing about Trick and how he's feuding with Santana over in TNA. So that who you're seeing Santana pinning at Victory Road is Ridge Holland from NXT. So Trick Williams basically sent Ridge Holland as like a henchman to try to take out Santana, and that turned out to be a win for Santana, a hard-fought one. But yeah, that's kind of how Trick Williams is kind of killing time over there on TNA while he's doing stuff on NXT. So he does try to get at that NXT title, like I mentioned, but Obafemi throughout this month is in a feud with Ricky Saints. So here is Obafemi over here. If you could see him, his back is turned in this picture that I got. And here's Ricky Saints, and they're on the Grayson Waller effect on NXT. So this is from September 16th. And they're getting ready for a NXT title match, which Ricky Saints earned a shot at by defeating Josh Woods. So that was like a number one contenders match they had. Ricky Saints clean win, and he got a shot at Obafemi. So Trick Williams wants to stick his nose everywhere, and he thinks he's the man. He's got an ego the size of the whole planet, this guy. And he butts his nose in, basically a few days before Saints and Obafemi are supposed to have this match. And somehow, what comes out of this segment, believe it or not, out of this Grayson Waller effect segment, is Grayson Waller sets up a match between Obafemi and Trick, but for both titles, for the NXT title and the TNA World title at the following NXT, which would be just a few days before No Mercy. So Ricky Saints would be like, well, okay, you guys go ahead and fight, and I'll fight the winner. So that match ends with no winner, by the way. I'll just spoil it for you guys. I'm going to get to that when I talk about the Invasion TNA angle. But yeah, basically all of TNA came out, and they ruined that match, and there was no title change at all. So Trick is still the TNA champion as we speak. He's headed into a match with Santana at Bound for Glory, and he didn't win the NXT title off of Obafemi. Obafemi, on the other hand, had to contend with Ricky Saints, and that happened at No Mercy. I will go ahead and spoil that one for you. That was a Ricky Saints victory. That was just a few days ago now on September 27th, No Mercy. And Ricky Saints is the NXT champion, so that was his coming out party. He, since leaving TNA, or not TNA, excuse me, AEW, he had a rough time. Couldn't get out of that contract. He was stuck there, and finally he got out of it. I don't know how. God knows how. Tony Khan released him, and he spent some time in NXT. He's had some good feuds. I will say the feud with Jasper Troy I really enjoyed, and he's been doing as well as he can. He's got it. He looks the part. He acts the part. He is perfect. He is a good wrestler. He's an excellent wrestler. I'm sorry. And he deserves this title run, and he deserves to go to the main roster, and he deserves to have excellent top-level storylines in the main roster, to be honest, because I think he can carry a show, and he's going to be a star. He's going to be a huge star, an even bigger star than he is now. So that's that. Ricky Saints is currently the NXT champion. Obafemi, I guess, we haven't seen from him or heard from him in the little bit of time since No Mercy has happened. It's been just a few days. So we've only had one NXT since, and they're getting ready for the Invasion angle. So we don't really know what's up with Obafemi. Some people think he's going up. He might as well, based on his size. I mean, he would do well in the main roster, I think. He's also a very good worker. So, Obafemi, I approve. I give him a thumbs up. Go ahead. Bring him up. Ricky Saints, on the other hand, he is going to be leading Team NXT against TNA in the Invasion/Showdown storyline coming up this Tuesday. But like I said, I will wait to get to that a little later on. So that concludes basically what's going on with Trick Williams. It's what I was trying to do overall. It kind of tied into a lot of things. I talked about the NXT title. I talked about his feud with Santana. And I approve of Trick Williams. I will say Trick Williams, 2 thumbs up for this whole period. excellent, excellent. One of the bright spots of this whole thing. One of the reasons I keep watching NXT and TNA at the moment. Next up, one other thing I want to mention as a crossover, quote unquote, although I think a lot of people wouldn't think that at this point, is Joe Hendry. So I want to talk about Joe Hendry because he is technically still a TNA full-time wrestler, and he is on NXT a lot. So he's basically on both shows, but although he's officially hasn't signed with WWE, so I consider his appearances on NXT crossover stuff because it's just not exclusive. So Joe Hendry, during this month, he has been feuding with the Dark State. So because Hank and Tank were feuding with Dark State, they enlisted the help of Joe Hendry. So that was a big, long thing. You know, Ricky Saints and Oba Femi even feuded with Dark State, and they teamed up with Hank and Tank. But Saints and Oba didn't stick with that feud, and Hank and Tank stuck around and kept feuding with Dark State and Joe Hendry. So they called on his name, and he appeared. So that's been happening a lot on NXT. Actually, they are finding new, silly ways to just say his name and have him appear, which I don't know. I don't know if I dig that because it's kind of a silly joke. It's not really natural. It's obviously premeditated. So overall, I'm probably not too fond of Joe Hendry's gimmick. Overall, I think it has run its course, but they're still going with it. They're going full force. Looks like WWE want to sign him because they're giving him big push and lots of time and lots of jokes and stuff on their show for Joe Hendry. But okay, I'll just say that will be a slight criticism of mine for this show in recent weeks is the continued trope of Joe Hendry just appearing whenever anyone needs him and just saying his name. So nowadays, literally on NXT, when anyone says his name, he appears. So, okay. Other than that, in terms of crossover for this past month for TNA and NXT, I do have to mention the situation with the TNA Knockouts World Championship. So, right when I left covering NXT, which was up here, as I mentioned when I started this show, Heatwave. The last thing I reviewed was the August 24th Heatwave, and that was where JC Jane lost the Knockouts World title back to TNA wrestler Ash by Elegance. So Ash by Elegance started a reign as TNA Knockouts World Champion, although JC Jane remained the NXT champion. So I will talk about JC Jane's NXT title feud with Lola Vice coming up. But as for Ash by Elegance, so I would mention later that she did have a feud for the entire month against Masha Slamovich. So she was set to face Masha Slamovich at Victory Road in a no disqualification match. And then she ended up retiring on that day on the show. So she vacated the title. And they ended up having Victory Road is over here, by the way, on the 26th at the bottom. On a Friday, this was the day that Ash by Elegance retired, and she vacated her title. On that very same day, they had a battle royal of tag teams. And supposedly the winning tag team would get to face each other that night for a chance at the Knockouts World title. So it all happened very fast. And for some reason, Kalani Jordan was there from NXT. And Laying Lee, they were partners, and they ended up having a match as they won the Battle Royal, and then Kalani Jordan ended up winning the Knockouts World title. So, Kalani Jordan, yes. Back to a NXT wrestler, the Knockouts World Championship. So 1 month, TNA had it back. They took it back from JC Jane and now lost it to Kalani Jordan. So Kalani Jordan is the TNA Knockouts World Champion. I'm not going to say she doesn't deserve it. She's really good. She actually might be better than JC Jane in the ring, I think. But they also made her team captain based on just being in TNA for she has been there, but being their champion for a week or something, and they made her team captain going into this battle with NXT. So that was very strange. But I'm going to get more into that later on. But as of right now, that's the situation. So for the Knockouts World Championship, Kalani Jordan is the champion. For the NXT Championship, JC Jane. Let's see what JC Jane was doing. So JC Jane, she had just got out of that match at Heatwave and lost the TNA Knockouts title in a three-way against Ash by Elegance and Masha. So she dropped the TNA Knockouts World title and had the NXT title and had to contend with Lola Vice. So Lola Vice at Heatwave defeated Kalani Jordan and Jada Parker to earn the number one contendership. So for this whole month up till No Mercy, she feuded with Lola Vice. So Lola Vice, she didn't win that match. I will just spoil it for you guys. JC Jane got out of that match. She got help from a mystery masked person. And I guess I'll just get into it with Fatal Influence and JC Jane's stable, which has basically broken up. So one of the stories of WWE in recent days is that Fatal Influence's Jasmine Nix got released, or she didn't get re-signed or picked up, or whatever the case may be, however you want to put it. But I had an eye on Jasmine Nix throughout my reviews for the past few months. I kind of thought she was in danger, to be honest. I thought they were kind of giving Fatal Influence more time. When they give someone more time and a push in NXT, I get a little scared, because it's kind of like, hey, this is your last chance. We're putting you out there. We're going to give you a shot. So she had a lot of matches, a lot of airtime with Fatal Influence, and I just kind of didn't see that she was doing that great, really. She's okay. She looks great. But in the end, I guess WWE found her superfluous and excess to their needs. So she's gone. And Lainey Reed was the one who beat her up backstage. They ran an angle recently where Jasmine Nix got laid out. And for many weeks before that, I have written it in my notes here. I'm not going to go through every single situation. But for many, many weeks, JC Jane was acting very disrespectfully towards Jasmine and just putting her down, belittling her, and Jasmine would do nothing about it. Jasmine would have aspirations for the tag titles, for the speed title, and they would just say, yeah, right, you. And then in the end, she did a job. She finished the storyline, she got laid out, and she got written off, and that was the end. And JC said, you know what, we didn't need her anyways. So Lainey Reed has been hanging around Fatal Influence, I guess, trying to get in with them. For some reason, she likes them. And she admitted that she was the one who took out Jasmine Nix and helped JC Jane defeat Lola Vice at Victory Road. So it seems like maybe they're going to take her in, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with that. I don't know if it's a good idea or a great idea. It's been a long time building. Might as well do it. See if they could become a power team, I guess. They're replacing Jasmine Nix with Lainey Reed. So that should make them a stronger team, I suppose. And Fallon Henley is going nowhere. So that's what's going on with the NXT women's title. By the way, I have transferred to talking about NXT exclusive storylines because I'm basically done with crossover storylines, and I will get to the Invasion one, which is the big crossover storyline, at the very end because it is the most recent thing that's happening. But I do want to go through the month in NXT first. So let's go through some things that happened in NXT, some major storylines. I will mention at the very beginning that I was surprised to see Jada Parker kind of accept the loss to Lola Vice at Heatwave. So there was a moment on NXT after Heatwave where it seemed like, because Jada, every time she loses a match for the NXT title, she can't accept it and tries to beat people up and get another shot at the title or whatever she has to do. But this time she was kind of respectful. She's like, you know what, you did it, and she gave her props. So she let Lola go off and do her feud with JC Jane. In the meantime, she had to contend with Lash Legend. So this whole month was basically a month where Jada Parker feuded with Lash Legend. They had 2 matches, one on September 8th, and Lash Legend won that match, but then Jada couldn't take the loss, couldn't accept it, laid Lash out after the match, actually attacked her with a hypnotic and drove her through the guardrail. So they ended up continuing their feud, and Jada Parker defeated her on this past Tuesday's NXT. So their feud continued through, I guess, it also happened at the 27th. They also had something happen between them there, because Jada Parker was a fill-in in that Speed Tournament final match, which I'll get to that in a minute. I do want to talk about that Speed Tournament thing. I have thoughts on it, but Lash Legend interfered there. So they had a pretty serious feud throughout the month, and in the end they both got a win. Jada Parker got the last win. I don't know if that means it's over. I think it's a good feud. Both of them would be very useful in the main roster, and I can't say that I thought one did better than the other. So I'll give both Jada and Lash Legend props for this whole month for their little feud that they had going on. Other than that, what else do I want to talk about? Let's see. I got to choose something else from NXT. I got a lot of storylines here. The one I will choose to go with next is the one that I think probably, I don't know if I want to say it's the best one, but probably the most high profile in terms of star power, is the Jordynne Grace Blake Monroe feud, which was stemmed from before this time period I am covering. I have reviewed much of this feud, which started, I would say, probably in August or sometime before that, when Blake Monroe and Jordynne Grace were friends, and then the whole, Blake Monroe did the whole heel turn, same way she did in AEW right off the bat when she started in NXT, and then off they went on a feud. So continued on through these these weeks that I am showing you here. And the Heatwave match, it ended kind of not really with a fuck finish. I mean, Blake Monroe kind of rammed Jordynne Grace's face, I think, into a turnbuckle that was exposed. The steel underneath the turnbuckle, I really forgot how it happened, but I didn't think it was that blatant. She pulled the turnbuckle off because she was just holding on to it, trying not to get pulled away. And so I didn't think she really cheated outright, but Jordynne Grace was still pissed about it, and she would get involved in her matches, and Blake Monroe was like, what the fuck, I beat you, this was over. And then they had several scuffles. Jordynne Grace, who is just on a rampage trying to get at Blake Monroe, she actually had a match with Callie Armstrong, if I recall, from Evolve, because she bumped into her, and Callie was pissed at that. But after her match with Callie, she ended up brawling with Blake Monroe again, busted Blake Monroe open, and then Blake Monroe went to that dark place. So that's where we got a scene where she was kind of having that crazy face. Next week, she's cutting these promos, doing these vignettes, and she's demented, right? So it leads to them having a steel cage match, which happened at No Mercy, and this was Jordynne Grace's revenge win. So as of right now, I think they're 1-1. I suppose they'll have another match probably. I don't see it being over. Neither one is involved in this TNA NXT invasion storyline they got going, so maybe they'll have time to have another match. I guess we'll see. But it's been going really well. They're both doing really well. They're both going to go to the main roster. They're both going to be NXT champions. No doubt about it. So no problems there. Next up, I will talk about Miles Bourne, and Lexis King. So this also started before this time period that I'm reviewing. So I'm starting in the middle of this feud, but before, from what I was reviewing on my live streams, basically Lexis King has been doing this weird, intense troll job saying that Miles Bourne isn't deaf. You know, kind of making fun of him, saying that he's faking it or whatever. This leads to them having a blindfold match on the 26th of August, NXT. And this was a really funny match because basically, I think once the referee got distracted with something, Lexis King just basically took off his blindfold and low-blowed Miles Bourne and won the match that way, which was freaking hilarious. But that was not the end. Miles Bourne was pissed off about that, turned out the lights backstage and beat Lexis King's ass with a steel chair, then got Finn Balor to team up with him and gang up on Lexis King on NXT Homecoming, and then they had a match on the 23rd, a hardcore match, and that was where Miles Bourne defeated Lexis King and I suppose put an end to the feud. So it started off weird. The feud started off very weird. The premise of it was very strange. These segments where we didn't know what Lexis King was doing at the very beginning when he was like pretending to be deaf. Okay, you know, all that took a lot of time to develop, but in the end, I think there was a couple good scenes that came out of it, and I will say that they both did well, especially Lexis King. I don't know. I like Miles Bourne. I think he's an inspiration, obviously. I think that's probably what they could get out of him, the inspirational thing, that people will just be happy that he can perform even though he's handicapped. But overall, I'm just, not very interested to see Miles Bourne, really, to be honest. But Lexis King, I like his personality. That's my view on it so far. But alright, what else do I got on NXT? What else do I got? I'm not very organized today. This is probably the least organized I've ever been for a podcast. I'm kind of just trying to shoot the shit here and talk as if I was just unprepared, like The Rock did on that one NXT when he was so proud of himself for fucking going out on national TV and not saying anything for 8 minutes. He thought he was so good. But regardless, what's another thing I gotta talk about? Okay, this is another feud that has been going on in NXT since before the 26th of August. I was reviewing these on my live streams. That's the feud between the Americans and the Canadians, namely Ethan Page and Tavion Heights. So before Chelsea Green was involved too, and Tyra May Steele, but as of this period that I'm reviewing right now, basically it kind of just branched off, and Tavion Heights is feuding with Ethan Page. But a thing that got thrown in, a wrench that got thrown in, is Ethan Page is having like a feud with some AAA guy at the same time. His name is El Hijo del Dr. Wagner Jr., I guess, who is the Latin American champion. So this guy comes in from AAA and to NXT, and he kind of messes with Ethan Page during these matches. So Ethan Page, who also had a match with Tyler Breeze out of nowhere, which was weird to me. So he's feuding with Tavion Heights, but Tyler Breeze comes out of nowhere and also gets a match out of nowhere. I thought that was very strange how they did that. But that's just a side story. For anybody who's following this whole Ethan Page North American title thing that's going on. But, okay, in the end, they had a flag match. Page lost, and then they also had another match at the pay-per-view at No Mercy that Page won. So he's still the North American champion, and he is to face El Hijo del Dr. Wagner Jr. next. So that's what's going on with Ethan Page. A little, I don't know. It's just I'm following all these shows. I get a little annoyed when they're asking me to follow AAA as well. Because I'm like, dude, I don't even speak Spanish. So I don't really want to watch AAA. But okay, so he's having a thing with this guy in AAA, and it crossed over here to their thing. I will talk about Tavion Heights, though, and Ethan Page. Well, this whole thing with the Canada versus the United States war, first of all, I think was a little funky. I didn't really understand what they were going for a lot of the time, because Tavion supposedly was the babyface good guy in the story, and yet he's representing America, who everybody really hates right now around the world. So it's hard to have a babyface, him really going for the American angle, I think, right now. I don't know if they should be trying that. So I don't know. I don't really want to blame Tavion in all this. I think he did well enough, especially the work in the ring. I don't really see much problem with how he speaks either. So I will call that a wash for the whole storyline, the Canada versus America thing. I think it didn't really work. It had a chance to work, but I didn't really dig it all that much. Let's see, what else? Javon Evans. Okay, so I got to talk about Javon. Took him a little bit to come back from his loss to Obafemi at Heatwave, so he had thought he was going to become NXT champion, and he was very disappointed when he didn't. So took a week off, I think, came back all dejected, and got confronted by Josh Briggs. So Josh Briggs came in talking shit to him. This was a feud that led into No Mercy. So these guys also feuded for the whole month as Josh Briggs disrespected Javon. And during this whole time, during this whole period, Javon Evans, a wrestler who I had been heaping tons and tons and tons of praise on for the past couple months for the matches he's been having with Trick, with Oba for the spots, the crazy wild spots. He had his SmackDown debut on the 26th, which was also the same day TNA had Victory Road over here, but Javon crossed over into the main roster for SmackDown and answered Sami Zayn's U.S. title open challenge. So that is something that I'm very happy about, I will say. I have to say that Javon, I think, should be going up sooner rather than later, especially with his style. He is young, but you can't ask someone to do that style taking crazy hardcore bumps forever and ever, really. So if they're going to get the best out of him, I think they could get it right now. I think he can put on banger matches on the main roster, and I think he should be going up as soon as possible, personally. The feud with Josh Briggs. Josh Briggs is extremely serviceable. I just worry when I see these guys getting a lot of airtime on NXT. Just because I'm thinking, like, well, it might be Shawn Michaels going, look, do or die now, sink or swim. And it would not surprise me if one of these days I just hear that email come in, or one of them, whatever, social media posts about 18 WWE wrestlers dropping off and Josh Briggs being one of them. He's got great size. He's pretty solid in the ring. He is a solid speaker. Is he really dynamic personality-wise? I don't know. Maybe not. It's a little ordinary. So I don't know if he could be one of those guys who are just like, well, we don't need him. We have a lot of guys. So that's the issue with Josh Briggs right now. He just got done with this feud with Javon Evans. It was a good feud. And he had a title feud before that, and a feud with his tag team partner who had broken up with him, Yoshiki Inamura. So I personally like the direction that they've gone with Briggs since he turned heel. I think it's been going well, and I don't want to see him get cut. I think he should get some more time. I don't think he should be going up yet, but I think he should at least get more time on NXT. So that's my view on Josh Briggs at the moment. What else? What else? Let's see. I got a story about Tatum Paxley and Lyra Valkyria. So Lyra Valkyria, who has been on NXT a couple times recently, and I will mention also about the culling. They are the only NXT team during this month to cross over to the main roster for the WWE Tag Team titles. So they actually challenged Alexa Bliss and Charlotte on an NXT Homecoming specifically for those WWE Tag Team titles. So they had a shot at them, and Tatum Paxley was the one who ended up getting pinned. And Izzy Dame, who had recruited Tatum into the culling and has been very patient with her and nice to her, seemed kind of annoyed with her, to be honest. So this is a recent development, though. And Lyra's been very nice to her. So Lyra, who has supposedly, I think, been struggling on the main roster, not really killing it with some of these feuds she's had with Becky Lynch and such, and has been sent back down to have a storyline in NXT. So she is trying to gain the friendship of Tatum Paxley, and Izzy is jealous, doesn't want them to be friends together. So, okay, take that what you will. I don't know. I think it's interesting that Lyra got sent back down. I do think it's a demotion, definitely. I gotta say, I am not sure what's to come of Lyra Valkyria in the coming weeks or months for WWE. I don't know if they're giving up on her, if they're trying to say, hey, you just need some work and you're going to come back, or I don't know. I don't really see the way back. They've given her a lot of time on a lot of high-profile angles on the main roster that a lot of people have criticized. So it's going to take something for her to come back from that. But all right, one more thing I want to talk about from NXT is Zaruka. So Zarya and Sol Ruka have remained friends throughout this whole period, although Zarya is trying to seem not jealous of Sol Ruka having two titles. So Sol Ruka is the North American champion and the Speed champion. So Sol Ruka, I think, nailed Zarya by accident with the Soul Snatcher during a tag team number one contenders match. So they were trying to... Zarya's been dying to get at some kind of championship, so she wanted to get at that tag team title, and instead ate a Soul Snatcher. So that was the first kind of... Well, they have hit each other by accident before, but it seemed kind of serious that Zarya was mad at her this time. And then Shayna Baszler showed up randomly out of nowhere and kind of calmed them down, tell them, hey, you guys gotta make up. This is too important, this friendship, to die like this. So they're still together. The one thing I will talk about for Sol Ruka in all this is that they have transferred those Speed titles to NXT. So they started that Speed Championship tournament for the women, which I mentioned earlier was won by Lainey Reed, and she was set to face Sol Ruka, but in the end, she was not cleared medically at No Mercy, and instead Sol Ruka defended that Speed title against Jada Parker. So that match had all its own drama that we talked about earlier. But yeah, as far as Sol Ruka and Zarya going, I don't see them breaking up. I think they had their one little spat, but that seems like that'll blow over. Other than that, I think basically that's all I want to talk about for NXT. I will jump to TNA before I do the Invasion stuff. Talk about some storylines that are going on over there. Joe Hendry. I talked about Joe Hendry feuding with Dark State earlier on. Over on Impact, he is feuding with Eric Young. So Eric Young, who is the leader of the Northern Armory, or at least he was, he took over Josh Alexander's stable when Josh Alexander left to AEW. But yeah, he had been talking about a cleanse. So Eric Young went crazy and he's like, you know what, cleanse is coming to TNA, and he said Joe Hendry was one of the people that had to be cleansed. So one day we just see that backstage he kind of strung up Joe Hendry with some wire and just left him unconscious. And that led to a feud between the two. So the two are feuding, and they are still feuding as of right now. As of October 2nd, the Impact that I watched, they are set to go at it again. They faced off at Victory Road. Joe Hendry won, but I will say that I am very fond of this feud. I'm very fond of Eric Young at all times. I think his serious scenes are really cool, and I enjoyed this feud very much. I don't know what's to come of it, to be honest. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Joe Hendry's just going to go over, and Eric Young is going to seem like he's just a crazy person, but Eric Young does think that there's some kind of conspiracy going on. But that's what's happening with Joe Hendry. What else? Okay. Another thing I would like to talk about, something I covered before I left on my little hiatus, is the Danny Luna heel turn. So Danny Luna, who turned heel on Impact in August on Indy Hartwell and Jody Threat. So their feud kind of continued on from here. She had an opportunity to get a Knockouts World title in a triple threat. Danny Luna did, but she did not win. Indy Hartwell won that match, and then Danny Luna still was pissed and beat both of them up after the match again. Other than that, we didn't really get much from Danny Luna here. I was kind of hoping for more from this heel turn, maybe some promos that were very impassioned. She does do her crazy face from time to time. So Danny Luna got one more crack at Indy Hartwell on the September 18th Impact. The personal concierge who was working for Ash by Elegance kind of enlisted Danny Luna to hopefully kind of put a dent into Indy Hartwell, who was going to special referee that match that never happened at Victory Road between Ash by Elegance and Masha Slamovich. But okay, so Danny Luna, basically what she did, she got a steel chair and she didn't finish that match against Indy. She just got a chair and got DQ'd and wailed on her with the steel chair and did the crazy face, and that's all we got from Danny Luna for the heel turn. So overall, I'd say I'm pretty disappointed with this past month since she turned heel. I kind of hoped for more. I don't know. I think if they had a heel turn, if they thought they had something in their back pocket with this heel turn, something that was going to end up entertaining or good, but it hasn't really panned out, unfortunately. So I think I'm gonna give, if I was using the old Malapert Smart review system, do I still have that over here? Here's my old review system. I would give it an indifferent for Danny Luna's run as a heel this past month. But regardless, I got other TNA storylines I do want to mention real quick before I move on to the invasion, quote unquote, that happens, and that's going to come this coming Tuesday on NXT. Next storyline I'll talk about in TNA that's been happening for the past month and is still going on to this day, leading into a mega match at Bound for Glory coming up this Sunday, actually, this coming Sunday, is the Order 4 feud against the System. So, Order 4 and the System. Order 4 had put JDC out, Johnny Curtis, Fandango. So he was out for a little while, injured by Order 4. So these two stables, top tier stables in TNA, obviously. Order 4, the System. On paper, it's a very nice matchup. And they are at each other's throats nonstop every week, seems like. And it ended with them getting booked for a match called Hardcore War at Bound for Glory. So they had a match at Victory Road between Moose and Mustafa Ali. Moose and Mustafa. That's kind of funny right there. But anyways, Mustafa Ali ended up winning the match because they have two new girls in their stable who wear like a Arabic covering on their face. Like, they're Arabs or something, So there you go. That's the advantage. That was the match that was going to determine which team gets the advantage for that hardcore war match. So I guess it's going to be one of them war games type of things where one person gets released and then the next and then the next. So order 4 in the system, they're going to get down. So I've been liking this feud. I can't say anything bad about this feud. Another thing I will mention about TNA is Leon Slater. So Leon Slater, who's actually been getting a rub on NXT recently, which I'll mention in a second. He's going to be in that 4-on-4 NXT versus TNA war showdown invasion thing that they got going on. And Leon Slater, he has had some title defenses. He's actually been competing in the tag team too with Cedric Alexander, which I'm not too fond of, but okay. Regardless, though, he had a match with Myron Reed of the Rascals to main event Victory Road. Good match, good match. And then after that match, it was announced that he's going to defend that X Division title against Javon Evans from NXT, which that blew my mind because I was like, dude, literally, I swear to God, I was just thinking about that a few days ago. Wouldn't it be great if Javon Evans and Leon Slater had a match? Because that's just a dream match. So it's going to happen. And that's probably the best idea I could think of. I mean, freaking Shawn Michaels, you son of a bitch. Because, hell yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Thank God for that. Another thing I will mention is Mr. Anderson came back to TNA. So Mr. Anderson, who had been in TNA for a few years when I was watching, somewhere around 2010, 11, 12, and had a lot of good feuds, I think. One particularly with Sting, I can remember. And Kurt Angle, actually. Mr. Anderson and Kurt Angle was a freaking great feud. So it was very nice and nostalgic to see Mr. Anderson back. He had a little feud with Kazarian, and he actually picked up a win teaming with Steve Maclin against Kazarian, who is now aligned with Jake Something. So Jake Something, who has not much to... Sorry, give me 1 second. I have my doggy right here. Let me try to finish this podcast off so I could go walk my dog. But anyways, Steve Maclin, he did help Mr. Anderson win that tag match in his return match, but he ended up losing the international title to Kazarian at Victory Road. So going into this showdown between NXT and TNA, Kazarian is your international champion, and he also is in the Team TNA, as far as I recall. Another thing I will mention is the whole Tessa Blanchard thing. So Tessa Blanchard got suspended because she attacked Gia Miller at, I think, Slammiversary, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, or Emergence, one or the other. Anyways, Tessa Blanchard has been suspended, and her friend Victoria Crawford was kind of trying to advocate for her to get her back into the active roster, and Gia Miller, I guess, agreed to lift the suspension. And then right when Gia Miller lifted Tessa's suspension, Tessa immediately came back and attacked Gia Miller again. But Gia Miller, who is the nice and sweet, commentator, not commentator, but, interviewer, and she never gets into fights or anything. But basically, she has to defend herself now against this bully, and it looks like they're headed towards a match at Bound for Glory. So I don't know how this is going to shape up or, work itself out. I'm very curious, to be honest. I think maybe TNA could come up with something creatively to make this work. But otherwise, that is basically the last major storyline I got for you from TNA before I start talking about the crossover that they're going to have this Tuesday at Showdown. So one thing I do want to mention about Showdown is the fact that the Hardys, the knockouts, not knockouts, but the World Tag Team Champions in TNA are going to face off against the NXT champions in the tag division, Dark State. So this is title versus title. Supposedly, as long as there's a clean ending, both titles should pass to one team, which is very interesting. So the Hardys, who, before I get to the NXT TNA Invasion storyline, I will say one last thing. They have set up their final showdown with the Dudleys at Bound for Glory. This got set up at Slammiversary, though, a couple months ago. So we've been waiting for this. And they had a face-to-face where they decided what type of match they're going to have, and they're going to have a tables match. So all the while this is going on, you know, a week away from Bound for Glory, same week as Bound for Glory, they're facing Dark State for the NXT and TNA titles, and they're going to face off against the Dudleys at Bound for Glory. So busy week for the Hardys. It's going to be interesting. But all right, let's see. Last thing. The Invasion storyline. So how did this start? All right. I'm always very interested in Invasion storylines because everyone dreamed that back in the day between WCW and WWF they had like a super show where they kind of, you know, invaded each other or whatever, or however they did it. So I will say I am slightly disappointed. So the whole invasion started over here on the 23rd of September, literally the week of No Mercy. So No Mercy was coming up on Sunday. I was talking about earlier how Trick Williams challenged Obafemi for a title versus title, TNA for NXT title, everything on the line. And it happened all of a sudden on this NXT on the 23rd, main event. And for some reason throughout the day, during the day, people started showing up from TNA. And Ava was out that day, so she left, you know, her two assistants in charge, Robert Stone and Stevie Turner. And TNA wrestlers were showing up like in the background. They were just shooting vignettes, like regular NXT segments, and you'd see like Mance Warner walk by, or you'd see, you know, Blake Yingley walk by or something like that. And when the main event came up, suddenly all these people, and especially Mike Santana, showed up front and center. And Santana showed up, and it caused a DQ, and then everybody poured into the ring. So, I don't know. I thought that was a little clunky how they did that. They didn't really prepare the audience for it. They didn't preview it on Impact, maybe. They could have mentioned, people could have been like, hey, we're going to NXT, something like that. Anything, I don't know. Nobody mentioned why they were there. I guess the TNA title was on the line. They didn't want it to get transferred to someone else in NXT or something like that. I really don't know. So they're just, a melee started, and that's how it happened, basically. So No Mercy showed up on Sunday, and Ava just was in her office and said, hey, we're going to have Invasion. It's going to be a show, and it's going to be a dual show, and this Tuesday we will figure out what the teams are going to be. So at that point, it was called Invasion, which got people excited. This was like a callback to Invasion from 2001. The logo looked exactly the same. They just kept the same logo, same text. So everyone was kind of excited for that. And then I think someone said it was political, that there's an invasion going on somewhere in the world, and let's change the name to Showdown. So that's how they changed the name. So that's coming up this coming Tuesday in October. This hasn't happened yet. Tuesday the 7th, NXT Showdown. So at No Mercy, Ava announces that they're going to have teams. Okay. So also at Victory Road, Kalani Jordan won the vacant TNA Knockouts World title. So that's going to come into play when I talk about NXT on the 30th. So that's where they figure out the team. So this is the most recent NXT and the most recent Impact as of right now that I'm speaking. So the captains chosen for TNA were Kalani Jordan, and on the other side, for the men, Santino chose Mike Santana. So the fact that Kalani Jordan got chosen as the team captain for TNA was a little ridiculous. Even JC Jane said it in her promo. JC Jane, who was chosen to be NXT's team captain, by the way. But yeah, she said, you've been the TNA champion for 5 minutes, and now they chose you to be their leader. It's a little funky. So this kind of killed the whole angle to me. The fact that they chose Kalani Jordan, it just made it like not very important, not very TNA, you know what I mean? So, and then on top of that, another person on that team on the women's side is, well, let's just take a look at the teams right now. Hold on. All right, so here we got the teams for the women's side. So, like I mentioned in TNA, we got Kalani Jordan, the new Knockouts champion, and Mara Sade, who was just in NXT as Jakara Jackson, and now she's representing TNA. So you see, that's another thing that's kind of makes it not very TNA. And then the Inspiration tag team, they have just won the Knockouts tag team titles in TNA from the Elegance brand. So there you go. 4 recently former WWE wrestlers are recently former or current WWE wrestlers are Team TNA. So they're facing off against JC Jane, Sol Ruka, Lola Vice, who is funky that Lola Vice is putting her differences with JC Jane to the side at this moment to face TNA. But okay, and then Jada Parker is the last one. So okay, I don't know. This match completely missed the mark for me. Other than that, the men's one, we could take a look at the teams there. So this time the TNA champion is on the NXT side, and he's teaming with the actual NXT champion Ricky Saints. Javon's on that team, and so is Miles Bourne. And Team TNA, this is a little more TNA really than the other side, is Santana, Kazarian, Moose, and Leon Slater. So Leon Slater and Javon are on opposite sides. They'll be facing off for that X Division title also, which is going to be amazing. Like I said, probably the best match ever. But Mike Santana here was very loyal to TNA. Even on the women's side, he was kind of introducing Kalani Jordan to people on the roster, women on the roster, trying to influence her what team to choose. So he's really full in on this, and he'll be on the opposite side of Trick Williams ahead of their TNA World Title match at Bound for Glory this very same week. So coming up on Sunday. And that's the situation we got for TNA and NXT. I think I've covered everything I want to cover, really. So that's that. All right, anybody who listened to this, I hope it was useful. Just some NXT and TNA talk, really, you know. Just kind of felt like just turning on the mic and talking some TNA and NXT, man, because really they're my favorite brands, and I don't really want to talk about anything other than wrestling. I've mentioned this before. People want me to start like a channel or talk about like politics or what's going on in the world. Like, dude, I don't give a fuck, bro. Like, I just don't give a fuck. All that shit is so stupid. Like, the world is so ruined. The world is ruined beyond repair. Ruined by really dumb, horrible, awful people who have no morals. So, you know, I just don't want to think about it. It's really sad. My escape, my happy place is wrestling. And to me, I think it's the most fun thing in the world. And my dream is that one day I don't have to worry about making money or going to work, and that I'll literally just be on this channel. And I swear to God, I'll just watch wrestling all day. I'll literally watch every show that's on. I'll go watch old shows, review classic shows. That's my dream. My dream is to review and watch every single show there's ever been on this YouTube, and just do that for every day for the rest of my life. If I could do that, I'll die happy. But anyways, regardless, that's the end of this episode number 160. We are back. I'm trying to do more shows these days. I took a little break, a little hiatus. I just needed to kind of get my health back in order. I'm feeling better, thankfully. So I think we could carry on and talk about wrestling. And I'm going to do this thing where every podcast I cycle which topic I do. So I did the WWE main roster last time. I did NXT and TNA today. I'm going to do Evolve next just because I really am very fond of that show. I really like it. And after that, I got to catch up on a lot of AEW. I'm going to gloss over it, though, because I just can't go in detail that far. Oh, you know what? I will mention one more thing I forgot to mention as far as Super Showdown or whatever it's called. The last thing I forgot to mention, Mustafa Ali came out of nowhere and challenged Ethan Page to a North American title match. So if he can take that title to TNA, it would be the first time a TNA wrestler has stolen a WWE title and taken it to TNA. So that would be interesting. And he did have this impassioned story about how he was owed a title shot when he got released from WWE. So that's kind of crazy if that's true. I didn't really go back and check it per se, but he did mention that he earned a North American title shot and never got it. So if he wins this, it would be nice poetic justice for Mustafa Ali. And that is really the last thing I want to mention on this show. But all right, hit like and subscribe. I will try to have Vlad the wrestling expert and Robert the Frozen Asian back on the show for the coming weeks whenever we talk about WWE and AEW next, which I can't promise you exactly when it'll be, but it'll be soon. I promise that. And we hope you guys are doing well. We hope you guys enjoy WWE Showdown or Invasion this coming Tuesday. So we will talk about that whenever we can as well, the fallout to that and Bound for Glory and everything. So stay tuned to the channel and we will keep you apprised. All right, we'll see you guys next time.